1. I am Rowan Ashford, an Arctic Fox Omega who has spent the last 10 years pretending to be a beta, and the problem with that arrangement is that it only works if nobody looks too closely. Unfortunately, Fleet Command had just assigned me to work under Commander Cashin Wolf, a Black Panther alpha famous for noticing things nobody else could see. My secret survived military academies, medical screenings, combat deployments, and one deeply unfortunate incident involving a malfunctioning scent scanner. It was not, apparently, prepared for Cashin Wolf. Absolutely not, I said. Across from me, Finn Carter slowly lowered his sandwich. Finn was a capybara beta, which meant he approached every crisis with the same calm expression people usually reserve for weather forecasts and mildly disappointing restaurant reviews. "Good morning to you too," he said. I shoved the assignment order across the table. "Read it." He read it. Nodded once. Took another bite of his sandwich. "That seems important." "Important?" I nearly choked. "Finn, that is not important. A reactor breach is important. This is catastrophic." Interesting distinction. I've been assigned to Commander Wolf. Congratulations. Stop that. What? The smiling. I'm not smiling. You are emotionally smiling. Finn considered that. Fair. I pointed toward the hollow profile floating above the table. Cashin Wolf stared back from the image with amber eyes and an expression that suggested he personally intimidated gravity. "Look at him. I am. That's a predator. Technically, you're also a predator. I'm a fox. Predator. A small predator. Still counts. Nobody is afraid of foxes. Chickens probably are." I buried my face in my hands. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't understand." "Then explain." "He's Commander Cashin Wolf." "Yes." "The Cashin Wolf." "Still yes." "Youngest fleet commander in Imperial history." "Decorated war hero." "Correct." "Strategic genius." "That's what the posters say." "There are posters?" "Several." I stared at him. "You own posters?" "That's not the point." "You definitely own posters." "Finn." "Rowan." "Focus." He took another bite of his sandwich. "Fine. What's the real issue?" I hesitated. Because the real issue wasn't Cashin Wolf. The real issue was me. Specifically, the Arctic Fox Omega hiding underneath a mountain of forged records and pharmaceutical assistants. He notices things, I admitted. That's his job. Exactly. And what if he notices me? Finn stared for 3 seconds. "You have a crush on him." "What? You have a crush on him?" "No, you absolutely do. I admire him professionally. You watched his tactical briefing 14 times. Professional admiration. You downloaded the high-resolution version. Research. You paused it. Research. On his face. The tactical map was nearby. His face was the tactical map. Maybe. Finn sighed. You're doomed. That's not helpful. I know. 2 days later, I boarded the Resolute and immediately walked in the wrong direction. Twice. The flagship was enormous. Black steel corridors. Perfect lighting. Officers moving with terrifying efficiency. Everyone looked competent. Everyone except me. "Commander's deck?" I asked a passing lieutenant. He pointed behind me. "Other way." "Right. You were heading toward cargo sanitation." I enjoy understanding ship infrastructure. He looked unconvinced. Honestly, so was I. By the time I reached Commander's deck, my fox instincts had entered full panic mode. "Run away," they suggested. "Hide in a ventilation shaft. Become decorative furniture." Reasonable ideas, all of them. Instead, I stopped outside the commander's office and adjusted my uniform. "You are a beta," I whispered. "You are boring. You are forgettable. Nobody notices boring people." The door slid open. Cashin Wolf stood inside. My brain immediately resigned from active duty. Every hollow image had lied. He was taller, broader, more intimidating. Black hair, amber eyes, dark uniform, absolute confidence radiating from every movement. Not aggressive, not arrogant, just certain, like the universe had already agreed with him before the conversation started. His gaze settled on me. 1 second, 2, 3. My inner fox grabbed a suitcase and started planning an evacuation route. "Lieutenant Ashford," he said. Deep voice, calm voice, dangerous voice. "Commander." I stepped backward, directly into a supply cart. The cart rolled across the hallway. A storage container tipped sideways. 3 emergency blankets exploded onto the floor. Silence followed. Magnificent silence. the kind historians mention when discussing disasters. I looked at the blankets. The blankets offered no assistance. Inspection, I announced. Commander Wolf blinked once. Inspection. Emergency equipment readiness inspection. Blankets. Very important blankets. Behind him, somebody made a suspicious coughing sound that sounded remarkably like suppressed laughter. Cashin looked down. My stomach dropped. The tip of my tail had appeared behind my leg. White fur. Very visible. Very traitorous. I snapped it back instantly. Maybe he hadn't seen it. Maybe miracles existed. His amber eyes returned to my face. Miracles suddenly seemed unlikely. Come in, he said. I obeyed. Mostly because my legs forgot alternative options. The office overlooked a field of stars. Tactical displays floated above a black desk. Everything was immaculate. Organized. Controlled. I felt personally attacked by the comparison. Cashin accepted my transfer file. Logistics Intelligence Division. Yes, sir. 7 years service. Yes, sir. Highest crisis management scores in your department. I prefer organized disasters. One eyebrow lifted. Organized disasters. The disasters happen anyway. Somebody should alphabetize them. A pause followed. Then the corner of his mouth moved. Barely. Not a smile. More like a smile considering future employment opportunities. My heart immediately became unprofessional. Useful skill, he said. I try. He continued reading. Then stopped. Your file lists you as beta. There it was. The sentence. Simple. Casual. Terrifying. My pulse doubled. Correct. His eyes remained on the file. Interesting. Every muscle in my body locked. Interesting. The most frightening word in the Imperial language. Sir, I asked carefully. He closed the file. Nothing. Somehow worse. Significantly worse. Then he stood, which should not have been intimidating. Unfortunately, it was. You'll report directly to me every morning at 0700. Understood. Your office is across the hall. Yes, sir. Questions? Approximately 800. Most involved whether he had noticed my tail. The rest involved whether I should start a new life on a distant agricultural moon. No, sir. Good. I turned toward the door. Lieutenant. I froze. Sir. Breathe. My lungs immediately forgot how. I am breathing. Not very well. The suspicious coughing sound happened again. Heat rushed into my face. I'll improve. See that you do. I escaped with what remained of my dignity. Outside, I leaned against the wall and exhaled. My communicator buzzed instantly. Finn appeared on screen. Still alive. Technically. How bad? Blankets became involved. Oh. Why does everyone accept that explanation? Because it's you. I glanced through the office glass. Cashin Wolf stood beside his desk, transfer file still open. His gaze rested on the page containing my medical classification. Beta. Then slowly, deliberately, he looked toward the door. Toward me. Toward exactly where I was standing. My blood turned cold. A second later, my communicator chimed again. New message. Sender, Commander Cashin Wolf. My stomach dropped. I opened it. One sentence appeared on the screen. Lieutenant Ashford. I believe there may be an error in your medical records. 2. For exactly 3 seconds, I considered faking my own death. Not a dramatic death. Something administrative. A clerical death. The kind caused by misplaced paperwork and unfortunate database updates. Unfortunately, Imperial law frowned upon that sort of thing. Why do you look like that? Finn asked through the communicator. Like what? Like someone just informed you that breathing now requires a permit. I showed him the message. Lieutenant Ashford. I believe there may be an error in your medical records. Finn read it. Nodded. Took a bite of something crunchy. Interesting. Interesting. Very. Finn. What? I am seconds away from becoming a cautionary tale. Maybe he found a typo. Nobody summons people because of typos. Accountants do. This is worse than accountants. Another message arrived before I could continue. Report to my office in 10 minutes. My soul attempted escape. Oh. Finn nodded again. That one is less encouraging. Thank you for your support. I support you completely. You sound relaxed. I'm a capybara. That isn't a reason. It explains most things. 10 minutes later, I stood outside Commander Wolf's office, trying to remember how lungs worked. The problem with being a fox was that our instincts had opinions. Strong opinions. Right now, every instinct I possessed was screaming the same thing. Run. Hide. Dig a hole. Become one with nature. Unfortunately, military regulations discouraged all three. The door slid open. Lieutenant. I stepped inside. Sir. Cassian Wolf sat behind his desk. Dark uniform. Amber eyes. Impossible face. My crush was deeply inconvenient. My survival instincts agreed. Sit. I Saturday relax. I immediately became more nervous. His gaze shifted toward the file resting beside him. My file. My terrible, secret-filled file. Your medical records are unusual. There it was. The execution announcement. Unusual. I repeated. How unusual? Several required screenings were delayed. Administrative backlog. For 6 years. A very dedicated backlog. One eyebrow lifted. My heart stopped. Apparently his eyebrows had military-grade authority. Interesting theory. Thank you. That wasn't praise. Right. Silence followed. The dangerous kind. Not angry. Not hostile. Just thoughtful. I would have preferred angry. Thoughtful meant he was connecting dots. Lieutenant. Sir. Have you avoided medical evaluations? No, no. No, sir. You answered quickly. Efficiency is important. You looked at the door. Traitorous eyes. Situational awareness. You also checked the distance. Even more traitorous eyes. Professional habit. That tiny sound somehow contained several thousand words of skepticism. I hated it. Mostly because I deserved it. Cassian opened the file again. According to this report, your pheromone profile has remained unchanged since enlistment. Cold panic spread through my stomach. Lucky me. That isn't how biology works. Maybe I'm special. The words escaped before I could stop them. His gaze lifted immediately. You think you're special, Lieutenant? Abort. Abort immediately. No, sir. A moment ago you did. Temporary loss of judgment. To my horror, the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Worse. Almost a smile. You say strange things when nervous. I say strange things all the time. Fair point. My heart betrayed me again. That was the problem. Every conversation made him harder to fear and easier to like. Which was dangerous because I absolutely should fear him. He was observant. Intelligent. Patient. The kind of predator that didn't chase. The kind that waited quietly until prey walked into the trap on its own. Like I was currently doing. Tell me something. His voice pulled me from my thoughts. Sir, why logistics? That question surprised me. What? Your evaluations are exceptional. Tactical reasoning. Crisis management. Strategic planning. He closed the file. You could have chosen command training. Nobody had ever asked that before. I like fixing problems. Commanders fix problems. After someone creates them. His expression remained unreadable. I continued before my courage disappeared. Logistics keeps people fed, equipped, prepared. Nobody notices when it works. And if it fails, everyone notices. A strange look crossed his face. Approval, maybe. Good answer. Warmth immediately rushed into my chest. My inner fox rolled onto its back and exposed its stomach. Useless creature. Thank you. You admire military strategy. My pulse froze. What? Your training records. He tapped the file. Optional coursework. Every advanced lecture I've ever published. Death. Immediate death. Educational interest. You attended a live seminar 3 years ago. Educational commitment. You asked a question. Educational enthusiasm. His eyes narrowed slightly. You remember the exact question? Unfortunately, I did. Every word. Every second. Every expression on his face afterward. No, you do. Maybe a little. What was it? This was a disaster. A very organized disaster. I asked whether adaptability mattered more than preparation. And you said preparation creates adaptability. His gaze lingered on me. You remembered. I wanted the floor to open and consume me. It was a good answer. Something changed in his expression then. Not much. Just enough to make my heartbeat stumble. Before either of us could say anything else, a sharp chime interrupted the room. Cassian glanced toward the tactical display. New notifications appeared across the screen. Fleet Readiness Review. Medical Compliance Audit. My blood instantly turned to ice. Medical Compliance Audit. No, absolutely not. Cassian read the report. Then looked back at me. Slowly. Deliberately. The way a panther might watch movement in tall grass. Interesting timing. I forced a smile. Very. The audit includes everyone assigned to command staff. Wonderful. Full biological evaluation. My smile cracked. How comprehensive. Very. My fox instincts began writing farewell letters. Cassian leaned back slightly, studying me. Lieutenant. Sir, you look worried. I dislike needles. The evaluation doesn't use needles. Even worse, because that meant scent analysis, hormonal scans, everything. When is it? I asked. Next week. My tail tried to appear. I wrestled it into submission. Barely. His eyes flicked downward for half a second. Too quick for anyone else to notice. Not too quick for me. He had seen. Again, a slow silence filled the office. Then Cashin spoke. Lieutenant Ashford. Sir, whatever it is you're trying so hard to hide, my entire world stopped. His amber eyes met mine. Calm. Focused. Certain. You should probably stop underestimating how obvious it is when you're nervous. Then he dismissed me. I somehow reached the hallway alive. Barely. My communicator rang immediately. Finn appeared. Well, we're doomed. That bad. Full biological evaluation next week. Finn finally stopped chewing. Oh, exactly. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate. Catastrophically unfortunate. Before I could answer, another message arrived. Sender, Commander Cashin Wolf. I opened it with shaking hands. The message contained only one sentence. Lieutenant Ashford, beginning tomorrow, your office will be relocated directly beside mine. 3. Bio 600 the next morning, I had developed a survival plan. It had 3 steps. Step 1. Move into my new office beside Commander Cashin Wolf without looking suspicious. Step 2. Hide every scent blocker, suppressant patch, emergency hormone stabilizer, and panic snack before he noticed them. Step 3. Do not let my tail make independent life choices. Bio 607. Step 3 had already failed. Your tail is out, Finn said through the communicator. I looked down. The fluffy white tip had curled around my own ankle like it was trying to comfort me. Or sabotage me. Hard to tell. Traitor, I whispered. It's nervous. It should be loyal. It's a tail, Rowan. It has betrayed military secrets before. Finn, calm as always, sat at his desk eating oatmeal from a mug because apparently capybara betas lived by rules the rest of us could not understand. Did you pack the blockers? Yes. The suppressants? Yes. The fake allergy medication? Unfortunately, yes. Good. It's not good. I told the most observant alpha in the Imperial military I have space allergies. Finn nodded slowly. Classic. That is not classic. It is now. I carried my first box into the new office at 0700 sharp. The room was clean, bright, and positioned directly beside Commander Wolf's office, which meant if I sneezed, whispered, panicked, or experienced a biologically inconvenient event, the most dangerous Black Panther alpha in the fleet would probably hear it through the wall. Perfect. Wonderful. Very healthy for my blood pressure. I set the box down and began unpacking at the speed of a man hiding evidence before a search warrant arrived. Reports went into the drawer. Spare uniform went into the cabinet. Emergency snacks went behind the lower shelf. Scent blockers went into a locked case, then into another locked case, then under a stack of logistics manuals nobody in their right mind would willingly read. I was just sliding my suppressant patches into a false compartment when someone knocked. 3 calm taps. My soul left quietly out the ventilation system. Come in, I said, using the voice of a person who had never committed medical fraud in his life. The door opened. Commander Cashin Wolf stepped inside. Black uniform, amber eyes, silent presence, instant room temperature change. My fox instincts immediately screamed, hide the evidence. My stupid romantic instincts whispered, he looks good today. Both were unhelpful. Lieutenant. Commander. His gaze moved once around the office. Once. That was all. I still felt like he had inventoried every object, measured my pulse, and judged my choice of emergency snacks. Settling in. Yes, sir. Efficiently. I enjoy organization. His eyes rested on the stack of logistics manuals for half a second. Half a second too long. Do you? Very much. Enough to store medical supplies behind regulation procurement volumes? My heart stopped. I looked at the manuals. Looked at him. Looked back at the manuals. Those are not medical supplies. No. They are. My brain searched for a lie. Any lie. A good lie. A normal lie. It found nothing and handed me garbage. Bookmarking tools. Bookmarking tools. Yes. In sealed pharmaceutical packaging. Advanced bookmarking. The silence that followed deserved its own rank. Cashin did not move. Did not accuse me. Did not even raise his voice. He simply looked at me like a panther watching a fox pretend not to be standing in a trap. Lieutenant Ashford. Sir, are you aware that lying badly is often worse than not lying at all? I'm beginning to suspect that. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. Then his gaze dropped. My tail had appeared again. Not just the tip this time. A full fluffy curve had slipped out behind me and was currently trying to tuck itself under the desk. I stepped sideways to block it. Cashin's eyes followed the movement. Of course they did. Foxes, he said slowly, are not known for subtlety when cornered. I'm not cornered. You're standing between me and your desk. Strategic positioning. You've said that before. It's a versatile phrase. For one dangerous second, his eyes softened. Then the softness disappeared so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. He reached into his jacket and placed a slim data chip on my desk. Medical compliance audit updated the schedule. My stomach sank. Updated how? Several officers with incomplete records will undergo preliminary scans today. The room tilted. Today. This afternoon. That seems sudden. Audits often are. Could be postponed. No, could be misplaced. His eyebrow lifted. Are you asking me to lose official documents? No, sir. Good. Hypothetically, do official documents ever lose themselves? Not in my command. Naturally. Of course. Why would I receive even one miracle? He turned toward the door, then paused. Lieutenant. Yes. You should secure your advanced bookmarking tools before someone less discreet finds them. Then he left. Just like that. No accusation. No threat. No direct question. Somehow that was worse. Much worse. Because Cashin Wolf had seen the suppressants, understood they mattered, and chosen not to expose me. Yet, my communicator buzzed. Finn appeared. You look pale. Preliminary scans are today. Finn stopped chewing. That was how I knew things were serious. Today. Today. That's bad. Thank you for finally reacting like a normal person. I'm still calm. Finn. Internally, I am standing up. That means nothing. For a capybara, it means everything. I grabbed the locked case and shoved it deeper into the drawer. I need a plan. Tell the truth. I stared at him. You're right. Terrible plan. Finn. Fake a scheduling conflict? With what? Dental emergency. I have perfect teeth. Emotionally, maybe not. Not helping. Finn thought for a moment. I can delay the medical system. How? I know someone in records. Can they erase the audit? No. Can they move my scan? Maybe. To next year. To 1500. I close my eyes. That's 2 hours later. You're welcome. I need more than 2 hours. Then fake the dental emergency. By noon, my scan had been delayed to 1500, which gave me exactly enough time to panic in a more organized fashion. I spent the next 3 hours solving supply reports with one eye and researching biological scan loopholes with the other. There were none. None useful anyway. Apparently, the Empire had very clear opinions about people lying on medical records. Rude. At 14:55, I stood outside the medical bay with my collar high, my scent patch secured, and my tail wrapped so tightly around my waist under my jacket that I was fairly sure I had invented self-strangulation. Dr. Ethan Hayes, the chief medical officer, looked up from his tablet. Beta. Human. Kind eyes. Terrible scanner in hand. Lieutenant Ashford? That depends. He blinked. On what? How attached you are to doing this scan? He smiled politely. Very. Unfortunate. Please step forward. I stepped forward like a man approaching a cliff. The scanner lit up. Soft blue light passed over my wrist. Then my throat. Then the scent patch near my collar. The device beeped once. Dr. Hayes frowned. I stopped breathing. That's odd. No. 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 What's odd? Your hormone stabilizer reading is unusually high for a beta. My mind went blank. Completely blank. Then, from somewhere deep in the garbage pile of my survival instincts, a lie crawled out. Capybara vitamins. Dr. Hayes stared at me. Excuse me. My friend recommended them. From the doorway, a voice said, Did he? I turned slowly. Commander Cashin Wolf stood there. Of course he did. Because the universe had stopped pretending to be neutral and had chosen violence in the form of one terrifyingly observant alpha. Commander, Dr. Hayes said. I didn't realize you were observing today. I wasn't. Cashin's eyes rested on me. Plans changed. My tail tightened around my waist. Painfully. Treasonously. Dr. Hayes checked the scanner again. The reading could be interference from an external suppressant. Allergies, I said instantly. Cashin looked at me. Space allergies? Death would have been kinder. Dr. Hayes blinked. Space allergies? Rare condition, I said weakly. Very rare, Cashin added. His voice was calm. Too calm. Lieutenant Ashford appears to be the only documented case. I wanted the floor to open. The floor refused. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. I'll need to run a secondary scan. Is that necessary? I asked. Yes. Is necessary a flexible word? No. The scanner changed from blue to gold. Gold meant deeper hormonal analysis. Gold meant trouble. Gold meant my 10-year career was about to be cooked, plated, and served with garnish. The lights swept over me once. Twice. The device beeped. Sharply. Dr. Hayes stared at the result. His expression changed. Not shock. Not certainty. Confusion. That can't be right. Cashin took one step closer. What does it say? Dr. Hayes hesitated. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The system is detecting traces of omega suppressants. Silence fell. Not ordinary silence. Execution silence. My fox instinct stopped screaming. My tail stopped moving. Even my lungs gave up. Cashin did not look surprised. That was the worst part. He looked at the scanner. Then at Dr. Hayes. Then at me. Calm. Focused. Patient. Like he had found another footprint in the snow. Lieutenant Ashford, he said quietly. Would you like to explain why a beta has omega suppressants in his bloodstream? 4. I would like to state for the official record that I had several excellent explanations prepared. Unfortunately, the moment Commander Cashin Wolf asked why a beta had omega suppressants in his bloodstream, every single one of them abandoned me. My brain became an empty apartment. No furniture. No lights. No tenants. Just panic echoing through the hallways. Lieutenant, Dr. Hayes prompted gently. Right. I swallowed. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Commander Wolf folded his arms. Good. Very reasonable. Excellent. Extremely reasonable. Silence. Dr. Hayes waited. Cashin waited. Even the scanners seemed to be waiting. My tail had completely given up and wrapped itself tighter around my waist like it was preparing for burial. Well, Cashin asked. I accidentally took the wrong vitamins. Dr. Hayes blinked. Omega suppressants. Very confusing packaging. The warning labels are bright red. I'm colorblind. Your medical file says you're not. Selective colorblindness. Nobody spoke. The scanner made a tiny electronic noise that somehow sounded judgmental. Lieutenant, Cashin said calmly. That may be the worst explanation I've ever heard. That's actually encouraging. Why? Because I've clearly never had reason to practice. Dr. Hayes lowered the scanner and pinched the bridge of his nose. Commander, the reading isn't conclusive. Hope immediately burst into existence. Beautiful. Glorious. Precious hope. See, I said. Not conclusive. There are definitely omega suppressants present, Hayes continued. Hope immediately died. However, the quantity is unusually low. Cashin's gaze never left me. Meaning I need a full laboratory analysis. No, absolutely not. The universe had officially become my enemy. How long? Cashin asked. 24 hours. Good. Not good. Catastrophically not good. Perhaps, I said carefully. We could simply agree nothing happened today. 2 pairs of eyes turned toward me. No, I asked. No, they answered together. Wonderful. Even medical professionals were forming alliances against me. Hayes returned to studying the scanner. There's something else. Every organ in my body attempted resignation. What else? The hormonal profile doesn't match the suppressants. The room fell silent again. Cashin stepped closer. Explain. Hayes frowned at the display. The suppressants are genuine omega suppressants. And the biological markers don't align properly. For the first time all afternoon, confusion replaced panic. What does that mean? Hayes looked up. It means the scan shouldn't be possible. That sounds promising. It isn't. Of course not. The system detects traces of suppressants. He tapped the screen. But the underlying profile remains incomplete. Cashin's expression sharpened slightly. Predator alert. Very bad sign. Equipment malfunction? He asked. Hayes shook his head. Unlikely. External interference? Possible. Intentional. Also possible. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Because I knew exactly what had happened. My suppressants. My scent blockers. My modified hormone regulators. 10 years of carefully managed deception were confusing the machine. Unfortunately, explaining that would require admitting why. Interesting, Cashin murmured. There was that word again. My least favorite word in every known language. Please stop finding things interesting, I muttered. Both men looked at me. Nothing, I said quickly. Internal dialogue. Hayes cleared his throat. Regardless, I recommend a comprehensive examination. Scheduled. Cashin replied immediately. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? Tomorrow? I thought next week. The audit changed priorities. Can priorities change back? No, can I? Also no. I closed my eyes briefly. Somewhere deep inside, my inner fox was lying dramatically on the floor. Lieutenant, Cashin said, are you unwell? Emotionally. To my horror, Hayes laughed. Traitor, that isn't technically a medical diagnosis, he said. It should be. The examination finally ended 30 minutes later. Somehow I escaped without being arrested, exposed, imprisoned, or medically dissected. Small victories mattered. I had just reached the corridor when my communicator exploded with incoming calls. Finn. Naturally. I answered immediately. How bad, he asked. They found the suppressants. Silence. Finn. I'm standing up again. This is not the time for capybara culture. Sorry. They moved the full examination to tomorrow. Longer silence. Oh, exactly. That's bad. Thank you. Very bad. Thank you. Catastrophically bad. Finally. Appropriate emotional engagement. I leaned against the wall. I need options. How illegal? Moderately. Good. I know several. Finn. One of them involves paperwork. Obviously. Another involves temporary identity reassignment. No. A third involves stealing medical equipment. Definitely no. Fine. He sounded disappointed. Then tell me everything. I explained the scan. The suppressants. Hayes' confusion. Cashin's suspiciously calm reaction. Wait, Finn interrupted. He wasn't surprised? No, not even a little. No, Finn frowned. That's weird. Thank you. Really weird. Thank you. Because he was right. Cashin hadn't looked shocked, or confused, or caught off guard. He had looked exactly like a man discovering information he had already suspected existed, which was much worse. My communicator suddenly chimed again. New message. Sender, Commander Cashin Wolf. My soul immediately attempted evacuation procedures. What now? Finn asked. I opened the message, then froze. Rowan. Finn. What? I think I'm dead. What does it say? I swallowed. Dinner. 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 With Commander Wolf? Yes. Finn stared. Why? I don't know. Another message appeared beneath the first. Lieutenant Ashford. Since tomorrow's examination appears to be causing you considerable distress, I thought a private discussion might be useful. 1900, Officers' Lounge. Attendance is not optional. I stared at the screen, then stared some more. Rowan. Finn asked carefully. Yes. I'm no expert. You're absolutely not. But I don't think military investigations usually begin with dinner invitations. I looked toward the medical bay doors, toward the scanner, toward the impossible Black Panther Alpha who kept finding my secrets interesting. Somewhere inside my chest, panic and hope started fighting. The terrifying part was that neither side was winning. Then a final notification appeared on my communicator. Updated examination notice. Observer assigned, Commander Cashin Wolf. My soul left the galaxy. 5. If military investigations always started with dinner invitations, I would like to formally recommend several policy changes. First, fewer investigations. Second, fewer dinners. Third, significantly fewer investigations conducted by terrifyingly attractive Black Panther alphas who may or may not already know your deepest secret. You're overthinking. Finn said through my communicator. I am absolutely not overthinking. You've changed shirts 3 times. That's called preparation. You've also practiced saying hello. Professional courtesy. To a dinner invitation. Mandatory dinner. Finn took a slow sip of tea. Still dinner. Unfortunately, he was right. At 1845, I stood outside the officers' lounge wearing my least suspicious uniform and approximately 7 pounds of anxiety. The problem wasn't the dinner itself. The problem was that tomorrow morning I would undergo a full biological examination while Commander Cashin Wolf personally observed. Tonight felt less like dinner and more like the calm moment before a meteor strike. Relax, Finn said. That advice has never helped anyone. It helps me. You're a capybara. Exactly. I ended the call before his species became an official insult. Then I stepped inside. The officer's lounge was quieter than expected. Warm lighting, comfortable seating, a panoramic window overlooking endless stars. Not exactly the setting I imagined for a potential career-ending conversation. Cassian Wolf sat alone near the observation glass. Dark uniform, relaxed posture, one hand resting against a coffee cup. Somehow he looked less intimidating outside the command deck. Unfortunately, less intimidating turned out to be significantly more dangerous. Because now I could notice things. Like the fact his hair fell slightly over his forehead when he wasn't working, or that his expression softened when he looked out at the stars, or that my inner fox was once again making terrible life choices. Lieutenant. His voice pulled me back to reality. Commander. Sit. I obeyed, mostly because my knees had forgotten alternative options. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just unfamiliar. There were no reports, no scanners, no interrogations, no obvious disasters, which somehow made me more nervous. You seem disappointed, Cassian observed. What? You keep looking around. Professional awareness. You expected an ambush. I did not. His eyebrow lifted. You checked under the table. Betrayed by my own survival instincts yet again. Professional awareness, I repeated weakly. Of furniture? Dangerous furniture exists. To my horror, amusement flickered across his face. I'll remember that. A server approached and placed menus in front of us. The moment she left, I reached for the menu like a drowning man grabbing a flotation device. Unfortunately, the universe remained committed to my destruction. The menu slipped from my fingers and fell directly into my lap. My tail immediately escaped to catch it. There was 1 second. Exactly 1 second. White fur appeared beneath the table. White fur caught the menu. White fur disappeared. Cassian's eyes moved downward, then back up. Silence. My soul evacuated the galaxy. Efficient, he said. What? Your reflexes. Training. Interesting training. There was that word again. Please stop saying interesting. His eyebrow lifted. Still threatening. Always threatening. The corner of his mouth twitched. Victory. Small victory. Temporary victory. The server returned and somehow managed to rescue both dinner and my dignity before either suffered permanent damage. We ordered food. Then silence settled again. Not awkward silence. Thinking silence. Dangerous silence. Lieutenant, Cassian said eventually. Sir, how long have you worked in logistics? Safe topic. Beautiful topic. Wonderful topic. 7 years. And before that, academy. You graduated near the top of your class. My stomach tightened. You memorize my records? I read them. Most people stop after the first page. Most people miss useful information. There it was. The reason he was terrifying. He noticed everything, remembered everything, connected everything, like a predator following tracks invisible to everyone else. You could have pursued command, he continued. You asked that already. You never gave the full answer. Fair point. I stared out the observation window for a moment. Endless stars drifted past. Commanders stand in front. And logistics keeps everyone standing behind them alive. For the first time that evening, genuine approval appeared in his expression. Not amusement. Not curiosity. Respect. The realization hit unexpectedly hard. Because I admired him. Had admired him for years. And some reckless part of me wanted him to think well of me too. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Dinner arrived before I could spiral further. For approximately 3 glorious minutes, my mouth remained occupied with food instead of self-destruction. Then Cassian ruined everything. What are space allergies? I nearly inhaled my drink. What? Space allergies. His expression remained perfectly serious. I've been thinking about them. Why? Scientific curiosity. Don't. Too late. I buried my face in my hands. Commander. Lieutenant. You know that's not a real condition. Do I? Yes. Interesting. Stop that. This time he actually smiled. Not fully. Not for long. But enough. My heart immediately committed treason. You're enjoying this. I accused. Perhaps. That's deeply unfair. Probably. Somewhere across the station, I was fairly certain Finn suddenly sensed my suffering and felt encouraged. Then Cassian's expression changed. Subtly. The amusement faded. The focus returned. The predator emerged again. Not threatening. Just attentive. Why are you afraid of tomorrow? The question landed softly, which somehow made it impossible to dodge. I'm not, Lieutenant. Moderately nervous. About medical examinations. Specifically, there it was. The trap. Calm. Patient. Almost invisible. I recognized it because foxes survived by recognizing traps. Unfortunately, recognizing them and avoiding them were very different skills. Needles, I said. There are no needles. Machines. You work on starships. Different machines. How? These ones judge me. For 1 second, surprise appeared in his eyes. Then something warmer followed. You think medical scanners are judging you? They always look disappointed. To my astonishment, he laughed. A real laugh this time. Quiet. Genuine. Completely unfair to my emotional stability. Lieutenant. Sir. The scanner doesn't dislike you. You can't prove that. I can. How? It dislikes everyone equally. Before I could answer, my communicator vibrated beneath the table. One message. Sender. Finn. I opened it discreetly. Are you alive? I typed back. Barely. Another message arrived immediately. Has he discovered anything? I glanced up, directly into Cashin's eyes. He had noticed. Of course he had noticed. He always noticed. Everything all right? He asked. Yes. Your tail appeared. My blood froze. What? Under the table. Silence. Endless, horrible silence. Cashin calmly sipped his coffee. Relax. Impossible. You saw it. A little. How much is a little? Enough. My heartbeat attempted escape velocity. This was it. The end. Career over. Secret exposed. Life destroyed. Except Cashin didn't look triumphant. Or suspicious. Or shocked. He looked thoughtful. Which was somehow worse. Lieutenant. Sir. There are several reasons an Arctic fox might hide certain biological traits. I stopped breathing. There are. Yes. Interesting. Please don't start. One possibility, he continued, completely ignoring me, is fear. My pulse hammered. Fear. Fear of consequences. His amber eyes held mine. Calm. Steady. Certain. Fear of being treated differently. Suddenly the room felt too quiet. Too warm. Too small. Because for the first time since this disaster began, he wasn't talking about records. Or scans. Or regulations. He was talking about me. And somehow that felt far more dangerous. Commander, I began quietly. Before I could continue, an alert chimed from both our communicators. Priority medical notice. Biological examination schedule updated. My stomach dropped. Cashin opened the notification first. His expression hardened immediately. Every trace of warmth vanished. Commander mode returned. That's unusual. Cold dread flooded my chest. What? He turned the screen toward me. Additional procedure authorized. Sent compatibility analysis. Observer required. Commander Cashin Wolf. My soul didn't leave the galaxy this time. It packed luggage and purchased property somewhere beyond it. 6. I have often heard people say that hope is a dangerous thing. Those people were optimists. Hope was not dangerous. Hope was adorable. Hope was harmless. The truly dangerous thing was receiving a notification that read sent compatibility analysis while secretly being an Omega who had spent 10 years pretending not to exist. This is how legends begin, Finn said over the communicator. Nobody has ever started a heroic story with those words. Maybe not heroic. Finn. Tragic then. Finn. He took a calm sip of tea. I'm helping emotionally. Emotionally, I need a refund. Unfortunately, my capybara friend appeared immune to panic. Meanwhile, I was standing outside Medical Bay 3 trying to calculate whether launching myself out an airlock would count as a valid medical exemption. The answer was apparently no. Lieutenant Ashford? Dr. Hayes called. Present against my will. That's not how attendance works. It should be. The doctor ignored me. Traitor. The examination room looked exactly like every nightmare my inner fox had ever imagined. White walls. White lights. White diagnostic equipment capable of uncovering every bad decision I had made since childhood. Unfortunately, there had been quite a few. Relax, Hayes said. I'm beginning to suspect medical professionals say that recreationally. Sit down. I obeyed, mostly because my legs had stopped negotiating. Then the door opened. Commander Cashin Wolf entered. Dark uniform. Amber eyes. Calm expression. Immediate emotional damage. Commander, Hayes greeted. Doctor. Cashin's gaze shifted briefly toward me. Lieutenant. Sir. My tail immediately tried to escape under the chair. Coward. Let's begin, Hayes said. No, let's not. The first scan lasted 20 minutes. Then 30. Then 40. Blood chemistry. Hormonal mapping. Genetic screening. Pheromone profiling. Every machine in the room seemed personally invested in my destruction. At one point, Hayes frowned at a monitor for so long I nearly confessed to crimes I hadn't committed. That's strange. There it was. The medical version of a horror movie soundtrack. Good strange. I asked hopefully. Not exactly. Bad strange. Possibly. Can we return to good strange? No, wonderful. Hayes continued reviewing data while Cashin remained near the observation console. Watching. Not interfering. Just observing. Which somehow felt far worse. Because every time I glanced up, those amber eyes were already focused on me. Not hostile. Not suspicious. Just attentive. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I hated being a puzzle. 45 minutes later, Hayes finally leaned back in his chair. Interesting. You people need new vocabulary. He ignored me. Another traitor. Commander. Hayes turned the monitor slightly. I think we have an explanation. Every muscle in my body locked. A good explanation? I asked. Reasonably good. That was the nicest thing anyone had said all morning. Hayes brought up several charts. Lines. Numbers. Hormonal markers. Things that looked expensive and threatening. Lieutenant Ashford shows evidence of a long-term endocrine irregularity. Cashin's expression sharpened slightly. Explain. Hayes nodded. Some individuals experience unstable pheromone development during adolescence. I blinked. That's a real thing? Yes. Since when? Always. That feels inconvenient. For doctors too. Fair enough. Hayes tapped. Another section of the report. According to these markers, Lieutenant Ashford appears to have experienced an abnormal hormonal pattern beginning around age 14. My heart nearly stopped. 14. That was actually true. Mostly true. Uncomfortably true. As a result, Hayes continued, he was likely prescribed suppressive stabilizers to regulate pheromone fluctuations. Silence. Then Cashin looked at me. You neglected to mention that. Nobody asked. Several people asked. Fair point. I forgot. For 10 years. It was a long 10 years. Hayes interrupted before my excuses became medically offensive. The medication explains the suppressants. Relief exploded through my chest. Glorious relief. Beautiful relief. Breathing became possible again. So everything is fine? I asked. No, relief immediately packed its bags and left. There are still abnormalities. Naturally. Why would life ever be simple? Hayes enlarged another chart. Your current profile does not fully align with a beta. My soul attempted evacuation procedures. Again. However, he continued, it does not align with a typical omega either. I stopped. Cashin stopped. Even the room seemed to stop. What? I asked. Hayes looked thoughtful. Your pheromone production is exceptionally low. How low? Almost non-existent. I stared at him. That sounds unhealthy. It isn't necessarily. That's reassuring. It shouldn't be. Less reassuring. Hayes continued scrolling through results. In rare cases, individuals with developmental irregularities may experience delayed secondary differentiation. Cashin folded his arms. Meaning Lieutenant Ashford could potentially develop stronger omega traits later in life. The room went silent. I blinked. Could. Possibly. Possibly. The probability is low. How low? Hayes hesitated. Very low. Define very low. Single digits. Finally. Good news. Beautiful news. Wonderful news. So nothing happens? Most likely. Excellent. We still need monitoring. I knew there was a catch. There was always a catch. How much monitoring? Quarterly evaluations. I hate that sentence. Medical science doesn't exist to make you happy. Harsh but fair. Hayes finalized the report and transferred the results. Official classification remains beta. For one glorious moment, I forgot how to breathe. Beta. Still beta. Still employed. Still alive. No tribunals. No investigations. No public humiliation. My career remained intact. Somewhere in the galaxy, angels were singing. Congratulations, Hayes said. That feels excessive. You're not being medically detained. Fair point. Then I noticed something. Cashin wasn't smiling. Wasn't relieved. Wasn't surprised. He was reading the report again. Carefully. Commander? Hayes asked. Something wrong? No, which meant yes. Absolutely yes. I knew that tone already. Predator tone. Problem-solving tone. The tone people used when they discovered one mystery had merely uncovered another. Cashin closed the report. The diagnosis explains the suppressants. Correct, Hayes said. It explains the abnormal readings. Correct. It explains the unstable profile. Correct. Cashin nodded once. Interesting. My eye twitched. Please stop saying that word. Neither man listened. Cowards. Hayes packed away the diagnostic equipment. You're cleared for duty, Lieutenant. Best sentence ever spoken. Thank you. Just attend your follow-up evaluations. Worst sentence ever spoken. Less thank you. The examination officially ended. I stood quickly, eager to escape before science changed its mind. Unfortunately, my communicator immediately buzzed. Incoming message from Finn. Alive? I typed back. Somehow. Seconds later he replied. Still employed? Better. Still beta. The response took several seconds. Then, I am standing up again. For the first time all day, I laughed. A real laugh. Short but genuine. When I looked up, Cashin was watching me. Something unreadable flickered behind his eyes. Not suspicion exactly. Not concern either. Curiosity, perhaps. Dangerous curiosity. You seem relieved, he observed. I enjoy remaining employed. Reasonable. We walked into the corridor together. Silence settled briefly between us. Then Cashin spoke. Do you believe the diagnosis? Every instinct in my body froze. The doctor's diagnosis? Yes. Careful. Very careful. He seemed confident. That's not what I asked. There it was. The trap hidden inside the question. I chose my answer carefully. I believe Dr. Hayes knows more medicine than I do. Cashin studied me for several seconds. Diplomatic. Survival skill. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. Lieutenant. Sir. You spend a great deal of time avoiding direct answers. My heart skipped. Professional habit. Interesting. I nearly walked into a wall. Commander. Yes. One day I'm going to hide every dictionary on this ship. To my complete astonishment, he laughed. Then, before I could recover, he stopped walking. One final thing. Cold dread returned immediately. Sir, your quarterly evaluations. Yes. I'll be reviewing them personally. My soul looked around, realized it had nowhere left to run, and quietly sat back down. 7. The best thing about surviving a medical examination was that life immediately found a new way to become complicated. 3 days after being officially declared a perfectly acceptable beta with mildly concerning biological tendencies, Fleet Command received an emergency distress signal from Outpost 17. The worst thing about Outpost 17 was that it supplied 3 frontier defense stations. The second worst thing was that it was currently running out of food. How does an entire supply station lose 6 months of inventory? I asked. Carefully, Finn replied. That isn't an answer. It wasn't meant to be. I stared at the report in disbelief. Somewhere, somehow, 22,000 tons of emergency provisions had vanished from the logistics network. Not physically vanished. Bureaucratically vanished. Which was almost worse. Please tell me this is a filing error. I can't. Why not? Because Commander Wolf is standing behind you. My soul attempted evacuation procedures. Again, I turned around. Cashin stood in the doorway holding a tablet. Calm. Collected. Attractive in a way that should probably require permits. Commander. Lieutenant. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. Fantastic. The inventory issue, he asked. Disaster. Can it be solved? Finally. A question I liked. A work question. A beautiful work question. Yes. Cashin's eyebrow lifted slightly. Confident. It's logistics. I pointed at the screen. Everything leaves a trail. Including missing supplies? Especially missing supplies. For the first time that morning, I forgot to be nervous. Reports covered the desk. Cargo routes. Freight schedules. Fuel allocations. Customs records. Data made sense. Data behaved. Data didn't unexpectedly ask about pheromones. Look here. I enlarged a shipment log. The inventory wasn't lost. Cashin stepped beside me, close enough that I caught the faint scent of cedar and cold rain. My brain immediately stopped contributing to society. Lieutenant. Right. I pointed again. Someone duplicated the destination code. Meaning, the system thinks one shipment became 2. But only one existed. Exactly. Cashin studied the screen. How many people would notice this? Almost nobody. You noticed. I have hobbies. Inventory fraud. Spreadsheets. To my horror, amusement flickered briefly in his eyes. A dangerous lifestyle. I've always enjoyed risk. The moment those words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because both of us immediately remembered several recent medical conversations. Cashin's expression became impossible to read. Clearly. Wonderful. I wanted to launch myself into a star. 30 minutes later, we occupied the main strategy room. Officers crowded around the tactical display. Cargo routes floated in holographic blue light. Everyone looked stressed. Everyone except Cashin. Somehow he remained calm, even when entire supply chains threatened collapse. It was annoyingly attractive. Status report, he said. A communications officer stepped forward. Outpost 17 has food reserves for 8 days. Murmurs filled the room. 8 days was bad. Very bad. Fuel? Cashin asked. Stable. Medical supplies? Stable. Food? 8 days. The silence afterward felt heavy. Then Cashin looked toward me. Lieutenant Ashford. Every head in the room turned. No pressure. None whatsoever. Sir. Recommendation? I stood slowly. Redirect Convoy 12. Several officers frowned. One shook his head immediately. Impossible. Why? I asked. Convoy 12 supports Sector 4. Sector 4 has surplus reserves. Silence. Officers checked their tablets. Nobody answered. I continued. Convoy 12 reaches Outpost 17 in 48 hours. Another officer spoke up. The fuel costs, already calculated. I pulled up the numbers. Still below emergency allocation thresholds. More silence. Good silence this time. Thinking silence. Alternative. Cashin asked the room. Nobody spoke. Then proceed, he said. Just like that. Decision made. Efficient. Direct. Trusting. The meeting ended 40 minutes later. Officers scattered to their assignments. Orders moved through the fleet. Crisis became action. One of my favorite transformations. I was collecting data pads when a voice spoke behind me. You were right. I turned. Cashin stood beside the display. About. Convoy 12. Warmth immediately appeared somewhere in my chest. Inconvenient warmth. The numbers were right. You trusted them. I trusted you. My brain stopped functioning. Completely. Fully. Catastrophically. Lieutenant. Sorry. You froze. Temporary system malfunction. The corner of his mouth twitched. Should I call medical? Absolutely not. Interesting response. Commander. Yes. I still intend to hide every dictionary on this ship. This time he actually laughed. Quiet. Brief. Real. It hit me embarrassingly hard. Because most people respected Cashin Wolf. Many feared him. Very few ever saw him laugh. Somehow I kept accidentally collecting those moments. You're smiling, he observed. I immediately stopped. No, you were. Unproven allegation. I witnessed it. Biased witness. Interesting defense. There are other words. Not as useful. I disagree professionally. For a second, we simply looked at each other. Not awkward. Not uncomfortable. Just easy. Which was strange. The terrifying commander who once reduced me to a nervous wreck could somehow spend 10 minutes discussing freight manifests and leave me feeling lighter than before. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. My communicator suddenly vibrated. One incoming message. Finn. Naturally. I opened it. Survived the meeting. I typed back. Yes. Did he smile again? I froze. Cashin noticed immediately. Of course he did. Problem, he asked. No, personal message? Yes. Emergency? No, Finn. I stared at him. How did you know? Statistical probability. Liar. Beautiful, intelligent liar. Another message arrived. Are you in love yet? I nearly dropped the communicator. Lieutenant. Cashin asked. Everything all right? Perfect. You look alarmed. My friends are stupid. Fair. Then his expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I think your friend worries about you. The simple statement caught me off guard. Maybe. Definitely. Something about the certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. Not painfully. Just enough to remind me that this was becoming dangerous in a completely different way. Not because of medical scans. Not because of hidden secrets. Because I liked being around him. And worse, I was beginning to suspect he liked being around me too. Before I could examine that terrifying possibility, alarms suddenly erupted throughout the command deck. Red warning lights flashed overhead. Every officer froze. Then movement exploded across the room. "Commander," someone shouted. "We've lost contact with Convoy 12. The room instantly transformed from peaceful to chaotic. Screens changed. Reports flooded in. Communications officers scrambled to stations. My pulse spiked. Not from panic this time. From focus. Real crisis. Real work. Cashin turned toward the command display. Commander mode returned immediately. Sharp. Precise. Controlled. Last known position. Entering the Vesper corridor. Cause. Unknown. Cashin's eyes moved across the room, then landed on me. "Lieutenant Ashford." "Sir, looks like we're not finished with this problem." Despite everything, despite the alarms, despite the chaos, I felt a grin appear. "Good." One eyebrow lifted. "Good. I hate unfinished puzzles." For one brief second, approval flashed openly in his eyes. "So do I." Somewhere deep inside, my inner fox immediately rolled onto its back and exposed its stomach. Completely useless creature. Then the fleet crisis began in earnest, and for the first time since meeting Commander Cashin Wolf, I found myself thinking about something other than hiding secrets. 8. By the time Convoy 12 vanished from the Vesper corridor, I had been Commander Cashin Wolf's unofficial strategic assistant for exactly 3 days, 6 hours, and 22 minutes. I knew this because my life had become so ridiculous that I had started tracking disasters with the precision of a tax auditor. "Status," Cashin said, standing in the center of the command room like the entire fleet had personally agreed to behave because he was watching. A communications officer answered immediately. No response from Convoy 12 for 9 minutes. Last signal. Stable. Then nothing. Distress beacon? None. Debris? None detected. That was bad. No distress signal meant either the convoy had lost all systems at once, entered a blackout zone, or something had interfered with communications before anyone could report it. I hated all 3 options equally. "Lieutenant Ashford," Cashin said. Every officer in the room looked at me again. I was beginning to suspect this was going to become a workplace hazard. "Yes, sir." "Assessment." My mouth answered before my survival instincts could object. "They're not destroyed." A few heads turned. One officer frowned. "That's an assumption." I looked at the tracking data. "No, sir. That's logistics." The officer's frown deepened. "Explain." I pointed at the holographic map. Convoy 12 carried refrigerated stores, medical gel, and emergency grain. 3 different container classes. If they were hit hard enough to lose all communication, at least one automated cargo distress beacon should have detached. Nothing detached. Cashin's gaze remained on the display. Conclusion? Either their systems are being suppressed, or they entered a natural interference pocket. "Vesper corridor has no registered pockets," another officer said. I enlarged the navigation layer. "Registered, no. Reported, yes." For civilian pilots filed complaints in the last 2 years. Nobody updated the military map because apparently paperwork only matters after everyone starts yelling. Silence. Then Cashin turned his head slightly. Was that a criticism of fleet administration? My brain caught up with my mouth 3 seconds too late. The room seemed to hold its breath. My ears wanted to flatten. My tail wanted to flee the country. I, unfortunately, had nowhere to go. "Yes, sir," I said, because apparently death had requested honesty. A professional one. For one long moment, Cashin only looked at me. Cold face. Amber eyes. Black Panther alpha presence heavy enough to make the room feel smaller. My fox instinct screamed, "Apologize." My pride said, "Absolutely not." My tail chose compromise by puffing out behind my coat. "Traitor." Then Cashin said, "Noted." That was it. No reprimand. No glare. No public execution. Several officers looked like they had just witnessed someone slap a sleeping dragon and receive a promotion. Cashin turned back to the display. "Update the map. Use Ashford's civilian reports. Navigation, plot possible blackout zones. Communications, switch to narrowband pulse relay." Then he glanced at me. "You're with me." My heart immediately did something medically irresponsible. "Where?" "Strategy pit." "All right. Bring your reports." "Which reports?" "All of them. Of course. Naturally. Why carry one tablet when I could carry enough data to build a small fort?" We moved to the lower command level, where the lights were dimmer, the screens were larger, and everyone looked like they had either skipped sleep or developed a personal grudge against caffeine. Cashin stood beside the main table. I spread my reports across the surface. Fuel logs, route deviations, civilian warnings, cargo behavior, weather patterns, everything. For the next 6 hours, the room turned into organized chaos. Officers came and went. Messages arrived. Routes shifted. Cashin gave orders with quiet precision. No wasted words. No panic. No dramatic speeches. Just command. I had admired him before. From a distance, through tactical briefings and archived lectures, and extremely educational high-resolution videos that Finn was never allowed to mention again. But working beside him was different. Terrifying, yes. Annoyingly attractive, also yes. But more than that, it was easy. Cashin would ask for a number, and I already had it. I would point out a risk, and he had already opened the same route. He would start a sentence, and I would finish the calculation before he finished speaking. Around hour 7, one senior officer stared at us and said, "Have you two worked together before?" I said, "No." Cashin said, "3 days." The officer looked even more disturbed. Finn sent me a message at 1:13. "Are you alive?" I typed back, "Unfortunately." "Did he feed you?" I looked at the untouched coffee beside me, then at the protein bar that had appeared near my elbow sometime in the last hour. I had not put it there. I slowly looked at Cashin. He was reading a report and absolutely not looking at me. Suspicious. Very suspicious. I typed, "Define feed." Finn replied instantly, "Rowan." I opened the protein bar with my teeth because both hands were busy moving data windows. Cashin's gaze flicked to me. "Use your hands." "Busy. You'll tear the wrapper." "I have teeth." "I can see that." "Then why comment?" "Because watching you fight a protein bar is distracting." I froze. Several nearby officers also froze. Cashin continued reading as if he had not just said something capable of damaging my nervous system. I slowly removed the wrapper with my hands. Better. Much. My tail, which had apparently been asleep, chose that exact moment to slide out from beneath my coat and curl around the leg of my chair. I noticed. Cashin noticed. The entire universe probably noticed. I reached down to grab it at the exact same moment Cashin reached out to move a stack of reports away from the chair wheel. His fingers brushed the fur at the tip. Everything stopped. Not the room. The room continued working. People moved. Screens flashed. Orders passed. But inside my body, every system froze. Cashin's hand stilled. His thumb rested lightly against the fluffy white fur for half a second longer than necessary. His expression did not change. Mine probably changed several times. "Your tail was near the wheel," he said. "Calm. Perfectly calm. Too calm. Safety concern." "Of course," I said faintly. "Safety. Yes." He withdrew his hand. I pulled my tail back so fast it slapped my ankle. Painfully. Deservedly. Cashin looked down. "Did you just hit yourself with your own tail?" "No, I saw it." "Then why ask?" For 1 second, the corner of his mouth moved. Professional curiosity. That phrase is becoming dangerous. Most useful phrases are. I wanted to argue. I really did. Unfortunately, at that exact moment, the main display flashed. "Commander." Navigation called. "We found a signal echo." Cashin turned instantly. "Location. Unregistered pocket, 42 degrees off the main corridor." I stepped closer to the screen. "That's not random." Cashin looked at me. "Explain." "Convoy 12 didn't drift there. They diverted." "Why?" I pulled up the civilian reports. "Because the original route was blocked." "By what?" The answer appeared before I could say it. A burst of radiation interference bloomed across the map. Not an attack. Not sabotage. A plasma storm forming inside a dead zone nobody had properly mapped. I felt a grin spread across my face despite the exhaustion. "There you are." Cashin glanced at me. "You sound pleased." "I hate missing data. And storms. Storms are just weather with confidence issues." One officer coughed. Cashin ignored him. "Can we reach the convoy?" "Yes," I said, "but not by following standard protocol." "Recommendation?" "Use the old civilian lanes." The room went quiet. An officer immediately objected. "Those routes aren't certified. They were used for 20 years before the military corridor opened. They're narrow. So are emergency budgets." "Lieutenant," the officer said sharply, "this is not a joke." My ears nearly flattened. My spine went cold. He was higher rank, older, and much louder. My fox instincts begged me to back down. Unfortunately, my mouth had never respected survival. "No, sir. The joke is that 3 stations are 8 days from running out of food because someone ignored civilian data and called it efficiency. The room went silent. Terrible silence. Career-ending silence. My tail puffed so hard it probably doubled in size. I realized what I had said. I also realized Cashin was looking at me. Very still. Very unreadable. Very alpha. Fear hit a second late, sharp and instinctive. I straightened anyway and forced my voice steady. My recommendation stands. Cashin's gaze held mine for 1 heartbeat. 2. 3. Then he looked at the map. Approved. The senior officer stiffened. Commander, Ashford is right. No hesitation. No explanation. No doubt. Just trust. My chest went warm so suddenly I almost forgot we were in crisis. Cashin continued. Navigation, plot the civilian lane. Communications, prepare pulse beacon chain. Operations, notify Convoy 12 to hold position if contact restores. Move. The room exploded into action. I stood there for 1 second longer than necessary, staring at him like an idiot. Cashin didn't look at me, but he spoke quietly enough that only I could hear. Good work. My inner fox immediately rolled over, exposed its stomach, and began composing love poetry. Useless creature. The crisis lasted until 4:40. We restored contact with Convoy 12 at 4:17. They had entered the interference pocket to avoid the storm, lost communications, and anchored in low-power mode exactly where the civilian reports suggested they would. By 4:40, the rescue route was confirmed. By 5:10, the supply crisis was no longer a disaster, merely an inconvenience wearing formal clothes. The command room slowly emptied. Officers left in pairs, exhausted and relieved. I remained at the table, finishing the final route correction because apparently my body had forgotten how to stop working. Cashin stood across from me. Still composed. Still upright. Unfairly functional for a man who had been awake all night. Lieutenant. Almost done. You said that 20 minutes ago. I was optimistic. You're exhausted. I'm efficient. You just try to sign your name in the destination field. I looked down. He was right. Rude of him to notice. Creative filing. Sit down. I am sitting. You're standing. I looked at my legs. Also rude. Temporary confusion. Cashin walked around the table, took the tablet from my hands, and placed it on the surface. His fingers brushed mine. Barely. A small contact. Nothing dramatic. Nothing inappropriate. My entire nervous system reacted like a startled animal in a kitchen. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His gaze lowered to our hands for 1 second, then returned to my face. Go rest. I need to finish the report. I'll finish it. You hate logistics reports. I hate bad logistics reports. Mine are excellent. Exactly. I stared at him. That was dangerously close to praise. Commander. Rowan. I stopped breathing. Not Lieutenant. Not Ashford. Rowan. My name in his voice at 5 o'clock in the morning, after a night of shared crisis and accidental tail contact, should have been regulated as a controlled substance. Yes. I asked, very normally, if normal meant barely audible. His expression remained calm, but his voice softened by 1 impossible degree. Rest. My tail emerged again. Slowly. Betrayally. It curled once around my own wrist, as if trying to hold me together. Cashin looked at it, then at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he reached down, picked up the edge of his dark command coat from the back of a chair, and draped it over my shoulders. Warmth surrounded me immediately. Cedar. Cold rain. Something quiet and steady that made my fox instinct stop screaming for the first time all night. You're shaking, he said. I'm not. You are. Minor structural vibration. Rowan. Fine. Maybe a little. The coat was too large. Too warm. Too much his. I should have taken it off. I did not. Cashin's eyes flicked once to where my tail had curled under the hem of his coat, half hidden, half comforted. His hand moved as if to adjust the fabric, then paused. For one brief, dangerous moment, I thought he might touch the tail again. He didn't. He only tucked the coat more securely around my shoulder. There, he said. Safety concern? I asked. The corner of his mouth finally curved. Small. Real. Devastating. Obviously. My communicator buzzed. Finn, are you dead? I looked at Cashin's coat around my shoulders. Looked at Cashin standing close enough that my instincts couldn't decide whether to hide or lean closer. Then I typed back. Worse. Finn replied. Did you fall in love? I stared at the message for far too long. Then Cashin's voice came quietly beside me. Is Finn asking if you survived? I locked the screen so fast it nearly cracked. Something like that. Tell him you did. I swallowed. Did I? Cashin looked at me for a long moment. Too long. Not cold this time. Not suspicious. Just steady. Yes, he said. You did very well. My heart immediately stopped pretending this was professional. 9. The official announcement that I had been reassigned as Commander Cashin Wolf's strategic assistant was delivered at 0800 and immediately reduced the fleet's collective productivity by approximately 40%. Nobody admitted it, of course. Military professionals rarely announced, I'm gossiping instead of working. They simply stared at me when they thought I wasn't looking and immediately looked away when I noticed. Unfortunately, Arctic Fox eyesight was excellent. They're talking about you. Finn informed me through the communicator. Thank you, Oracle. You're welcome. I already know they're talking about me. I know. I'm enjoying it. Typical. I walked into the operations briefing room carrying 3 tablets, 2 reports, and 1 rapidly deteriorating sense of self-preservation. The room fell suspiciously quiet. Good morning, I said. Morning, several officers replied. A few smiled. Most looked curious. One looked deeply offended by my existence. Progress. Then Commander Wolf entered. The room immediately returned to professional behavior. Amazing. Terrifying. Efficient. Status update, Cashin said. Everyone sat straighter, including me. Supply chain corrections are complete, one officer reported. Convoy 12 resumed route. Good. Another officer spoke. Navigation revisions distributed fleet-wide. Approved. Then Cashin looked toward me. Lieutenant Ashford. Every head turned again. I was beginning to think my job description secretly included being observed by wildlife researchers. Sir, your report. I activated the display. Analysis complete. The missing inventory issue originated from duplicated destination coding procedures dating back 6 years. Murmurs spread through the room. 6 years, someone asked. Nobody noticed? Somebody noticed, I said. Several times. Then why wasn't it fixed? I opened another document. Because every department assumed another department was responsible. Silence. That's ridiculous. I agree. You wrote that in the report? 3 times. A few officers coughed suspiciously. Cashin's expression remained neutral. You called fleet administration a bureaucratic sinkhole. Technically, I called it a moderately efficient bureaucratic sinkhole. Ah, context matters. A dangerous flicker appeared near the corner of his mouth. Of course. The briefing continued for another hour. During that time, I disagreed with Cashin 4 times, corrected a colonel twice, and accidentally insulted an entire procurement committee. It was a productive morning. Your recommendation? Cashin asked during discussion of revised escort schedules. Terrible idea. The room froze. Again. Elaborate, Cashin said. The escort allocation assumes ideal response times. I enlarged the tactical map. Nothing in this fleet has ideal response times except maybe your terrifying ability to appear behind people. A few officers looked alarmed. One actually choked. Cashin remained perfectly calm. Continue. If a corridor disruption occurs, these ships become isolated. I highlighted 3 sectors. Move the support vessels here instead. Costs increase by 4%. And emergency response improves by 22%. Silence. Calculations appeared. Officers checked data. Nobody argued. Approved, Cashin said. My heart did a small, embarrassing victory dance. The colonel beside me looked mildly offended. You disagree with the commander a great deal. Only professionally. Professionally. I enjoy being employed. You have an unusual way of showing it. Fair. Very fair. The meeting finally ended near noon. Officers began filing out. I stayed behind to organize reports because apparently becoming a strategic assistant mostly meant carrying even more paperwork than before. Tragic. Lieutenant. I looked up. Cashin stood beside the table. Sir. Lunch. My brain stopped. Lunch. Yes. As in food. Generally. Why? One eyebrow lifted. Because humans, foxes, and most known species require nutrition. Reasonable argument. Thank you. Then he simply walked out. I stared after him. Was that an invitation? I asked nobody. That was definitely an invitation, said a voice behind me. I nearly dropped 3 tablets. Lieutenant Mara Ellis stood near the doorway, smiling far too knowingly. It was not. Commander Wolf personally asking if you've eaten? Professional concern. MHM. Basic leadership. MHM. Normal workplace interaction. MHM. Stop making that sound. No, by the time I reached the officers' dining hall, several roomers had probably completed military training and received promotions. Cashin sat at a corner table reviewing reports. I sat opposite him. Immediately. Automatically. Like it was normal. Which was concerning. You look troubled, he observed. People are being strange. People are always strange. Good point. Lunch was surprisingly peaceful. Mostly because we spent half of it discussing cargo routes and the other half arguing about scheduling priorities. You're wrong, I informed him. That's a bold opening statement. Accuracy matters. Naturally. If operations keeps stealing logistics personnel, eventually nothing will function. An exaggeration. A prediction. Interesting. Commander. Yes. One day I'm deleting that word from every database in the fleet. That sounds illegal. Worth it. His eyes briefly lowered. I followed his gaze. My tail had emerged from beneath the chair again. Wonderful. Excellent. Betrayal. The fluffy white tip swayed lazily behind me. I reached down to pull it closer. At exactly the same moment, Cashin reached across the table to move it away from a passing service cart. Our hands collided. My tail froze. I froze. The universe froze. Safety concern, Cashin said calmly. Obviously, the cartwheel was approaching. Naturally, his fingers remained lightly against the fur for 1 second. Then 2. Then he withdrew. Perfectly composed. Perfectly normal. Across the room, I saw Lieutenant Ellis staring openly. Oh no. Oh no no no. This is not what it looks like, I said immediately. What does it look like, she asked. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Then opened it again. Maintenance. Maintenance. Tail maintenance. During lunch. Safety regulations are very strict. Beside me, Cashin continued drinking coffee. He did not help. He did not deny anything. He did not even look up. Traitor. Absolute traitor. Lieutenant Ellis looked between us. Right. Exactly. Completely normal. Thank you. I didn't say that. Disaster. Total disaster. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of reports, meetings, and increasingly suspicious looks from fellow officers. Around 1700 I was reviewing deployment summaries in Cashin's office when he suddenly asked, "Do foxes consider tail contact important?" Every organ in my body attempted immediate resignation. What? Tail contact. Why? Curiosity. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. I focused intensely on the report in front of me. Depends. On. Context. Silence. Then, interesting. I hated that word. Among foxes, I said carefully, certain gestures can be interpreted differently, such as touching ears. I see. Or tails. Another pause. Noted. My heartbeat became medically irresponsible. Did he know? No. Impossible. Cashin Wolf commanded warships. He did not secretly study fox social behavior. Right? Why are you asking? I managed. Professional curiosity. Liar. Maybe. Possibly. Definitely. The problem was that he sounded sincere, which somehow made everything worse. Before I could investigate further, the office door opened. A young operations officer entered carrying documents. Then stopped. Completely stopped. I followed her gaze. My tail had escaped again. It had curled around the leg of Cashin's chair sometime during the conversation. Not around mine. Around his. The room became very quiet. Sir, the officer said carefully. Report delivery. Leave it there, Cashin replied. Completely unfazed. She placed the report down. Slowly. Very slowly. Then left. The second the door closed, I buried my face in my hands. This is becoming a problem. The report. Cashin asked. No, the officer? No, then what? I pointed dramatically downward. My tail immediately tightened around the chair leg, as if refusing to cooperate. Ah, Cashin said. Ah, I see the issue. Do you? Yes. Excellent. I dropped my hands. Because I certainly don't. To my horror, he laughed. A real laugh. Warm. Brief. Dangerous. Then he stood. We're done for today. Good. Go home. Excellent plan. I gathered my tablets and escaped before my dignity suffered further casualties. Halfway down the corridor, my communicator vibrated. Finn. Naturally. How was your day? I stared at the message, then at my reflection in a nearby window, then back at the message. Finally, I typed, "I think my commander is accidentally flirting with me." The reply arrived instantly. Accidentally? I stopped walking. That was actually a very good question. 10. I realized I was in trouble on a Tuesday. Not because of a fleet emergency. Not because of a missing convoy. Not because my tail had once again betrayed me in front of half the officer corps. No. I was in trouble because Commander Cashin Wolf smiled at me during a briefing, and I spent the next 3 hours remembering it. "You're staring into space again," Finn informed me over a private call. "I'm working. You just entered the same number 6 times. I looked at the screen. Unfortunately, he was right. It's an important number. Rowan. What? You're doomed. I dropped my forehead onto the desk. I know. Say it. No, say it. Absolutely not. Rowan. Fine. I closed my eyes. I like him. Finn made a sound of victory. There it is. Don't celebrate. I've been waiting months for this. It hasn't been months. Emotionally, it has. I hated that he was enjoying this. At first it was admiration. I muttered. He's competent. Reliable. Smart. Protective. Attractive. There was a pause. And there it is. I groaned. Can we discuss literally anything else? No, Finn. No, you're a terrible friend. I'm an excellent friend. Excellent friends tell you when you've developed feelings for your terrifying superior officer. He's not terrifying. Rowan. Mostly. There he is. Before I could defend myself further, my office door opened. I immediately ended the call. Cashin stepped inside holding a tablet. Was that Finn? No, it was Finn. You can't prove that. Your expression changes when you're speaking to him. Traitorous face. What expression? The one that suggests you're being harassed by an idiot. That describes most conversations with Finn. Exactly. The corner of his mouth twitched. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Meeting in 10 minutes, he said. Sector review. Already prepared. I know. My heart did something embarrassing. You read the report? Twice. I wanted to verify the projections. And they were correct. I stared at him. Praise from Cashin Wolf should have required medical supervision. Thank you. You're welcome. Then he left. Simple interaction. Entirely professional. Completely normal. I spent the next 5 minutes smiling at a wall like an idiot. The sector review meeting started badly and somehow became worse. Resource allocation remains inefficient, a senior logistics director announced. According to whose analysis? I asked. Mine. That explains a lot. Silence exploded across the conference room. Somewhere behind me, I heard a suppressed cough. The director narrowed his eyes. Excuse me. My survival instincts finally arrived. Unfortunately, they were late as usual. What I meant, I said carefully, is that your model assumes static consumption. And nothing in the history of civilization has ever consumed resources statically. Cashin lowered his head slightly. I knew that look. He was hiding amusement. The traitor. Lieutenant Ashford, the director said. Do you always argue this much? Only when I'm right. The room went silent again. My ears wanted to flatten. My tail wanted asylum in another solar system. Interesting strategy, the director said dryly. Before I could answer, Cashin spoke. Continue, Rowan. Just Rowan. Not Lieutenant. Not Ashford. Rowan. Several people immediately noticed. I could see it happen. Tiny expressions. Tiny glances. Tiny conclusions forming. Disaster. Thank you. I said, trying not to sound affected. As I was saying, the meeting eventually ended without anyone being arrested, which I considered a success. As people filed out, I overheard 2 officers whispering. Told you. They're definitely close. I nearly walked into a wall. We're not close. I informed the empty hallway. You're talking to a wall, Finn said through a new message. How is your day? Worse now. Did you confess? No. Coward. I hated everyone. Especially Finn. By evening, the command offices had quieted considerably. Most personnel had gone home. Reports were finished. Schedules approved. Crises temporarily absent. It felt suspicious. You're frowning at a spreadsheet, Cashin observed from across the room. It started it. The spreadsheet. It knows what it did. I see. Do you? No, good. He laughed softly. Just once. Still enough to damage my concentration. I returned to the report. At least I tried to. The problem was that my tail had slipped free again. Worse, it had draped itself lazily across the side of my chair. Even worse, Cashin noticed. His gaze lowered briefly, then returned to his work. Fine. Good. Excellent. We could all pretend nothing happened. 30 seconds later, something brushed the tip of my tail. I froze. Completely. The touch came again. Gentle. Absent-minded. Almost thoughtful. My entire nervous system detonated. Slowly, very slowly, I turned my head. Cashin was reviewing a report. One hand held the tablet. The other rested lightly against the white fur near the end of my tail. Commander. What are you doing? He glanced down. Interesting question. I feel like it has a straightforward answer. Possibly. You're touching my tail. I am. Why? He considered that. Actually considered it. I don't know. That somehow made everything worse. You don't know? It looked soft. That's your defense. It's an honest one. I stared. He stared back. Completely calm. Completely serious. You cannot randomly touch people's tails. No. No, noted. He didn't move his hand. Commander. Yes. You're still doing it. Oh. He finally withdrew his hand. My mistake. My heart was trying to escape through my ribcage. Do you know what that means? I asked before common sense could intervene. One eyebrow lifted. What means? Touching a fox's tail. Silence. Then genuine curiosity appeared in his eyes. Should I? Oh no. Among foxes, I said carefully. Tail contact can be interpreted as personal. Personal. Very personal. I see. It's often considered flirting. The room became quiet. Not awkward. Not tense. Just still. Cashin looked at me for several seconds. Interesting. You are not allowed to use that word right now. My apologies. Accepted. Mostly. Then something changed in his expression. Very subtle. Very small. And if someone intended it that way. My brain stopped. What? The flirting. The flirting. Yes. Hypothetical flirting? If you'd like. This was a trap. A beautiful, intelligent trap. Then, I said cautiously, the fox would probably assume the other person was interested. Cashin nodded once. Reasonable. Why are we discussing this? Professional curiosity. Liar. The word escaped before I could stop it. Silence. Then, incredibly, the corner of his mouth curved upward. Perhaps. My heart forgot every regulation governing proper behavior. Commander? Yes, Rowan. There was that name again. Warm. Familiar. Dangerous. Are you flirting with me? The question slipped out. The second it did, I wanted to launch myself into deep space. Cashin looked genuinely surprised. Not offended. Not angry. Just surprised. Then something softer appeared in his eyes. What do you think? That was not an answer. That was attempted murder. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing useful emerged. Cashin watched the entire struggle with obvious interest. Rowan. Yes. You're overthinking. I think that's objectively true. Good. Good. Self-awareness is important. I buried my face in my hands. Somewhere behind my embarrassment, I heard him laugh again. Warm. Real. Entirely unfair. When I finally looked up, his expression had settled into something gentler than usual. Go home. Are you dismissing me? Yes. Because of the reports? No, then why? Another pause. Because you've been blushing for 3 minutes. My soul left my body. Immediately. Without notice. Good night, Rowan. I stared at him. Then at the door. Then back at him. Finally I stood. Good night, Commander. Halfway down the corridor, my communicator vibrated. Finn, did you confess? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I think something worse happened. The answer arrived instantly. Oh my God. What did he do? I looked back toward the closed office door and felt my heartbeat misbehave all over again. Then I typed the only honest answer I had. I think he might like me too. 11. I should have known happiness never arrived alone. It always brought disaster as a companion. 3 days after convincing myself Commander Cashin Wolf might actually like me, Lieutenant Ellis destroyed my emotional stability with a single sentence. Did you hear about the commander? I looked up from a logistics report. No. She sat down across from me with the expression of someone carrying dangerous gossip. Apparently, the fleet employed several hundred officers and exactly 0 people capable of minding their own business. He rejected another confession. I blinked. What? Again? Something unpleasant twisted inside my chest. Someone confessed to him. Ellis nodded. Supply division this time. How do you know? Because supply division won't stop talking about it. That seemed believable. Military officers could transport classified information across entire star systems without error. Rumors traveled faster. What happened? I asked. Ellis leaned forward. The officer asked if he was seeing anyone. I pretended to focus on my tablet. And he said no. The unpleasant feeling became worse. Then what's the story? Ellis lowered her voice dramatically. He also said he already loves someone. My fingers froze above the screen. For 1 second I thought I had misheard. What? She nodded. Apparently it's been years. The room suddenly felt warmer. Much warmer. Uncomfortably warmer. He said that. That's what everyone says. I hated everyone immediately. Especially everyone. Who is it? I asked before I could stop myself. Nobody knew. That should have made me feel better. It did not. Apparently only a few senior officers even know part of the story. Of course. Because the universe hated me personally. What story? Ellis shrugged. Supposedly someone saved his life during a border conflict years ago. My heartbeat slowed. Then stopped. Then started again. Saved his life. That's the rumor. She leaned back. Nobody knows the name. Nobody. No. I hated how desperately I wanted details. Nothing at all. Ellis thought for a moment. There is one thing. My stomach tightened. What? They were an Omega. The words landed like a physical blow. An Omega. Not a Beta. Not an Alpha. An Omega. My chest suddenly felt hollow. Ellis continued. Some kind of beast folk. I forced myself to remain calm. What kind? White fur. Everything stopped. Completely. White fur. White. Fur. My tail. The white tail Cashin kept staring at. The white tail he kept touching. The white tail he always seemed fascinated by. Suddenly, every memory rearranged itself. Every smile. Every glance. Every accidental touch. Every moment. Not because he liked me. Because I reminded him of someone else. Someone he actually loved. Someone he'd spent years unable to forget. The realization hit so hard I almost laughed. Of course. Of course that made sense. Far more sense than Commander Cashin Wolf falling for the disaster disguised as a logistics officer. I wasn't special. I was familiar. There was a difference. A huge difference. A painful difference. Rowan? Ellis sounded distant. What? You look weird. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I know. Unfortunately, that evening I spent nearly 2 hours convincing myself the conclusion was perfectly logical. Painful. Humiliating. But logical. Which made it worse. Because logic was difficult to argue with. Cashin liked white fur. Cashin liked foxtails. Cashin constantly stared at mine. Not because he liked me. Because someone else had left a scar in his heart years ago. Someone better. Someone unforgettable. Someone worth loving. By the time I reached that conclusion, I hated it. And believed it completely. The next morning was terrible. Mostly because Cashin seemed determined to make it worse. Good morning, Rowan. The simple greeting made my chest ache. Morning, Commander. His eyes narrowed slightly. You sound tired. I'm fine. Lie. Obvious lie. Terrible lie. Normally, he would have pointed that out immediately. Instead, he stepped closer. Didn't sleep? The concern in his voice hurt more than indifference would have. Because it wasn't mine. It belonged to a ghost from years ago. Someone with white fur. Someone he still loved. I'm fine, I repeated. Cashin studied me. Long enough to become uncomfortable. What happened? Nothing. Everything. My dignity. My hopes. My common sense. Nothing. There was that sound again. The sound that meant he knew I was lying. Unfortunately, he chose not to press further. Which somehow hurt too. Over the next week, I became an expert at avoidance. Not obvious avoidance. Professional avoidance. The sophisticated kind. If Cashin walked into a room, I found work elsewhere. If he invited me to lunch, I already had plans. If he stopped by my office, I suddenly remembered urgent reports. Very urgent reports. The most urgent reports in history. You're hiding from him. Finn's voice came through my communicator. I am not. You absolutely are. I've been busy. You hid in an archive room for 40 minutes. Research. There were no files in that room. Details. Unimportant details. Rowan. What? Talk to him. No, why? Because if I kept looking at Cashin Wolf, I would continue wanting things that could never belong to me. I wasn't interested in being someone's replacement. I wasn't interested in being compared to a memory. And I definitely wasn't interested in falling even deeper for an alpha who had already given his heart away. Unfortunately, Cashin noticed. Of course he noticed. Commander Cashin Wolf noticed everything. The confrontation arrived 6 days later. I was alone in a supply archive when the door slid open. A familiar scent entered first. Cedar. Cold rain. Danger. Lieutenant Ashford. I closed my eyes. Wonderful. Perfect. Exactly what I didn't need. Commander. The door closed behind him. A very concerning sound. Cashin folded his arms. You've been avoiding me. Straight to the point. Naturally. I've been working. You left lunch 3 times. Busy. You changed your route through command deck. My heart stopped. You noticed? His expression suggested that was possibly the stupidest question ever asked. Yes. Fair. Very fair. Silence stretched. Between us. Then he took 1 step closer. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just close. Dangerously close. What happened? Nothing. Everything. Your stupid rumor. Your impossible heart. My terrible timing. You wouldn't understand. His gaze sharpened. Try me. For 1 reckless second, I almost told him. Then fear won. Fear always won. I looked away. It's nothing. The silence that followed felt heavy, then unexpectedly gentle. Rowan. My name again. Soft. Warm. Dangerous. I don't know what conclusion you've reached. My heartbeat stumbled. But I think it's hurting you. I couldn't breathe. Because the worst part? He was right. Completely right. And I still couldn't tell him why. So I took 1 step backward. Then another. Creating distance. Creating safety. Creating exactly the thing I didn't want. Cashin watched the movement. Something unreadable flickered across his face. Gone almost immediately. Commander. My voice felt smaller than usual. I should get back to work. For the first time since meeting him, he didn't stop me. Didn't joke. Didn't smile. Didn't tease. He simply looked at me for a long moment. Then nodded once. Very well, Lieutenant. Lieutenant. Not Rowan. The title landed harder than it should have. And as I left the archive, I didn't see the way Cashin remained standing there alone. Didn't hear the quiet sigh. Didn't notice the faint movement of his hand where it rested against the edge of the shelf. Because if I had looked back, I might have seen something impossible. The expression of a man watching the person he loved walk away from him for reasons he couldn't understand. 12. For 6 days, I successfully avoided Commander Cashin Wolf. On the 7th day, he appeared in my office and ruined everything. The thing about Cashin was that he never chased people. He didn't need to. He simply arrived wherever he wanted to be and waited for reality to rearrange itself around him. At 2043, reality arrived wearing a black command uniform and carrying enough stubborn determination to make my survival instincts consider filing an official complaint. You're still here. I didn't look up from the report. Excellent observation, Commander. Your shift ended 2 hours ago. The report disagrees. The report is 12 pages. A very ambitious 12 pages. Silence followed. Then footsteps. He walked farther into the office. I knew without looking that his attention was fixed on me. Lately, I always knew. That was part of the problem. Before, being noticed by Cashin felt exciting. Dangerous in the best possible way. Now it only hurt. Because every glance had a new explanation. Every smile had a reason. Every time his eyes lingered on my white tail, all I could think about was him. The Omega. The one with white fur. The one who had saved Cashin's life years ago. The one who apparently occupied a permanent place in his memories. Have you eaten? He asked. Yes. When? Recently. Rowan. My grip tightened around the stylus. I hated when he said my name like that. Soft enough to matter. Lunch. That was 8 hours ago. Time is a social construct. Hunger isn't. I pretended to continue working. Cashin remained exactly where he was. Waiting. Patient. Unfairly patient. Then he said, "Come have dinner with me." My hand froze. There it was. No excuse. No meeting. No work discussion. No audience. Just dinner. Private. Personal. 6 days ago, I would have agreed before he finished speaking. Now I knew better. No silence. No. No, you're refusing me? That is generally how the word works. One dark eyebrow lifted. Why? Because I wasn't interested in being compared to a memory. Because I couldn't survive another evening hoping for something that belonged to someone else. Because I already liked him far too much. I'm busy. You've been busy for 6 consecutive days. Damn him. Coincidence. You changed your route through command deck. Coincidence. You stopped eating in the West Lounge. Coincidence. You hid in an archive room containing only cleaning supplies. Research. On MOPS. Military infrastructure is a broad field. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Somehow worse. Rowan. Commander. Look at me. No, the answer escaped too quickly. Too honestly. Silence filled the office. Then his voice softened. Please. Against every survival instinct I possessed, I looked up. Immediate mistake. Amber eyes met mine. Calm. Steady. Entirely focused on me. What happened? He asked quietly. Nothing. Everything. A rumor. A ghost. A white-furred Omega I could never compete with. Nothing happened. Liar. It should have annoyed me. Instead it hurt. You wouldn't understand. Something shifted in his expression. Try me. I almost laughed. If I told him the truth, this conversation would become unbearable. Forget it. I stood abruptly. The chair rolled backward. My tail slipped free from beneath my jacket. White fur spilled into view. Cashin's gaze followed automatically. Instantly. Without thought. And something inside me finally snapped. Can you stop doing that? He frowned. Doing what? That. I pointed at my tail. Looking at it. Genuine confusion crossed his face. Your tail. Yes. My tail. Silence. Rowan, every single time. The laugh that escaped me sounded bitter. Every room. Every conversation. Every chance you get. Understanding slowly appeared in his eyes. This is about your tail? Partly. Better than lying. You keep staring at it. Because I like looking at it. The answer came immediately. No hesitation. No embarrassment. No apology. My heart betrayed me instantly. That isn't helping. It's the truth. And you keep touching it. Yes. I stared at him. You're just admitting that. You asked. Cashin. His eyes softened at the sound of his name. Dangerous. Very dangerous. You know what touching a fox's tail means. Silence. Then, yes. My breath caught. You know? You told me. Of course I had. Weeks ago. Back when every interaction felt hopeful instead of painful. Then why do you keep doing it? I demanded. Why do you keep looking at it? Cashin held my gaze for several seconds. Then said quietly. Because I'm courting you. The universe stopped functioning. Completely. What? I'm courting you. No teasing. No smirk. No joke. Just certainty. The certainty of a man stating a simple fact. You're serious. Very. Every wall I had spent 6 days building cracked at once. Then I remembered. White fur. Omega. Savior. The man he had spent years searching for. The cracks. Sealed immediately. No, Cashin blinked. No. No, real confusion finally appeared. Rowan, you don't get to do that. Do what? Pretend. The word came out sharper than intended. You don't get to spend years looking for someone else, and then suddenly decide I'm convenient. Shock crossed his face. Actual shock. Convenient. I know about him. Silence. Absolute silence. Him. The Omega. I forced the words out. The one who saved your life. The one everyone says you've been in love with for years. Cashin stared at me, then closed his eyes for a brief moment. The fleet, he said at last, is unbelievably stupid. So it isn't true? Parts of it are. My chest tightened. Of course. There was someone. I knew it. Rowan. His voice sharpened. Listen. Somehow that made me obey instantly. Yes, he said. Someone saved my life years ago. Silence. And yes, as far as I know, he was an Omega. The room suddenly felt colder. I spent years trying to find him. There it was. The knife. Clean. Precise. Fatal. I laughed once. And now you're courting me? Would you stop interrupting? I blinked. Cashin Wolf almost never sounded irritated. Now he definitely did. The fleet turned that into a love story, he continued. I never did. I froze. What? I respected him. His gaze never left mine. I was grateful. Cashin, I owed him my life. He paused. That is not the same thing. My thoughts stumbled over each other. Then why were you looking for him? Because I wanted answers. For years. I had years. Fair. Annoyingly fair. And because people don't vanish that completely without making me curious. Curious? Extremely. I stared. He stared back. That's it. That's it. You're telling me the entire fleet invented a tragic romance because you were curious? The fleet lacks hobbies. I hated that explanation because it sounded plausible. Then why are you interested in me? I asked quietly. This time he didn't hesitate at all. Because you're you. My heart immediately attempted mutiny. That isn't an answer. It's the only answer. He took one step closer. I look at your tail because it belongs to you. Another step. I touch it because I want to touch it. Another. I invited you to dinner because I wanted to spend time with you. His amber eyes never left mine. And yes, Rowan Ashford. My pulse became dangerously unprofessional. I am absolutely courting you. The office suddenly felt too small, too warm, too dangerous, because part of me desperately wanted to believe him. I don't know if I can trust that. The admission escaped before I could stop it. Something softened in his expression. I know. The gentleness nearly hurt more than everything else combined. Then stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like I matter. Silence. Then Cashin smiled. Not amused. Not teasing. Something quieter. Something real. That, I said immediately. Stop doing that. No, one word. Simple. Honest. Impossible. Then he held out a hand. Dinner. My heart said yes. My brain said run. My pride said absolutely not. Guess which one won? No, Cashin stared for several seconds before sighing. You're impossible. I've heard that. Repeatedly. From qualified professionals. A reluctant laugh escaped him. Then he headed toward the door. Relief appeared, followed immediately by disappointment. But Rowan,